Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're zoning in on a really specific date, June 19th, 2025. And the reason is our sources, specifically this fantastic site Tarot by High C, describe the energy for this day as, well, completely paradoxical. Think almost no boundaries, really high confrontational energy, but then this call for surrender and balance. It's quite a mix.
It really is a fascinating combination to unpack.
Exactly. So we've got their daily astrology forecast for the 19th, the TarotScope, which is the Seven of Swords, very interesting, and this story they included called The Quiet Theft. Our mission today is basically to figure out what this all means. How do you handle a day with such intense, almost contradictory vibes? What's the deal with subtle strategies versus just going for it?
And that power of quiet action they seem to be hinting at.
Right. We think there are some really useful insights here, maybe even some surprising ones. So let's start with that baseline energy. What does the astrology actually say?
Okay, so the forecast for June 19th paints this picture of, and I'm quoting here, practically no such thing as boundaries today,
Mm.
which sounds potentially chaotic, right? It suggests the usual filters, the energetic buffers between people are just down.
Down, yeah, like everyone's raw nerves are exposed.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it continues. Energies are high, confrontational, and action-oriented. We're talking raw emotion, instant reaction, and zero filter.
Zero filter. Okay, that sounds like a recipe for interesting interactions, let's say.
Definitely. The source points out the contrast, though. It says it's great for breakthroughs,
Ah, okay. So good for pushing through something, maybe.
potentially. But then it immediately follows with terrible for group projects and delicate conversations.
Right. So don't try to negotiate peace treaties or give complex team feedback on June 19th. Got it.
Probably wise. It also warns you might feel frustrated, indecisive, or experience delays. It's this real push-pull feeling.
Okay, so it's messy. But how does the source suggest we actually deal with this messiness?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. He uses this metaphor, suggesting the world takes on the vibrancy and fragmented beauty of an impressionist painting. Meaning, it can be difficult to settle on one distinct strategy. Things aren't clear-cut.
Like looking at a Monet up close, all dots and dashes, no clear lines.
Exactly. And so the counter advice isn't to try and force clarity, but to surrender to the flow of life and trust in the divine plan. It also talks about balancing your own needs with the needs of others, fostering harmony and cooperation, which sounds challenging on a zero-filter day.
It really does. How do you foster harmony when everyone's blurting things out?
Well, maybe the key is in the next piece of advice. Practice self-compassion, forgiveness, and gratitude, allowing grace to guide your thoughts, words, and actions. So the control isn't external. It's about managing your internal state, your own reactions, turning inward when the outside is chaotic.
That's quite profound, actually. Amidst all that potential confrontation, the advice is internal grace. And despite the warnings, there are these positive affirmations too, right? Like embrace the energy of courage, passion, and new beginnings.
Yes, definitely. It's not all negative.
And it encourages you to use this day to set intentions, take inspired action, and trust instincts. So it's like the energy is there for action, but maybe not the kind of blunt, confrontational action you'd expect. Perhaps the inspired action is something more nuanced.
That seems to be the implication. It's a complex energy field to navigate.
So as you're listening, maybe think about how this boundaryless, high-energy vibe might show up for you.
Yeah.
And what kind of action or maybe strategic inaction feels right. Which leads us nicely into the TarotScope. We have this wild energy. How does the tarot suggest we handle it? It's the Seven of Swords.
The Seven of Swords.
Ah,
A card that often raises eyebrows. Its core themes are right there. Strategy, secrecy, deception, self-interest, tact, careful navigation.
deception. Okay, that sounds a bit ominous.
It can be, but it's often more nuanced than outright lying. It's about subtlety. The source says this card calls for subtlety and sharp wits. And it specifically states this isn't a time for laying all our cards on the table or confronting things head-on.
Which fits perfectly with avoiding those terrible group projects and delicate conversations the astrology mentioned. It's like, don't charge in.
Exactly. The advice is to be a quiet observer, to be moving strategically through situations, conversations, and emotions. It mentions you might feel an urge to withdraw from something or keep our true intentions under wraps, and in some cases, that's wise.
So it's okay to hold back a bit, to not share everything.
According to this, yes, sometimes it's the wisest course. It's about using strategy over brute force, choosing to observe rather than react, and looking for clever, non-obvious solutions to problems. Think smart, not loud.
Okay, that makes sense. But you mentioned deception. There's a warning side too, isn't there?
Absolutely. The Seven of Swords often carries a cautionary note. The source advises, if we encounter someone whose words or actions feel slightly off, trust our intuition.
Ah, the gut feeling.
Yes, it says the card warns of half-truths, hidden motives, or subtle manipulations. But, and this is important, it adds, it's not always malicious. Sometimes people hide things because they're afraid to be seen fully.
That's a really compassionate take on it. It's not just watch out for liars, but understand why someone might not be entirely forthcoming. Fear, vulnerability.
Exactly. And that applies inwardly, too. The card warns us to avoid self-sabotage through dishonesty with ourselves. Don't kid yourself, basically.
Like telling yourself convenient half-truths to avoid facing something difficult.
Precisely. Or letting avoidance become a coping strategy.
Yeah.
It's also about not cutting corners in ways that undermine you later. It's asking for a kind of strategic integrity. Be clever, be subtle, but be honest with yourself.
Okay, so it's about navigating external subtleties while maintaining internal clarity. That's quite a balancing act. How can you, listening now, use this awareness today, maybe in tricky conversations or decisions?
It really prompts that self-reflection, doesn't it?
It does. And to see how this plays out, let's turn to the story they provided, The Quiet Theft. It seems designed to illustrate exactly this kind of subtle strategy. It starts in this atmospheric place, the crumbling city of Aven, full of mist, rain, secrets. Very gothic.
Very. And our main character is Aven Blackthorne. He's a vampire centuries old, but the source makes a point of saying he's not your typical monster. He's a tactician. He thrives not through raw violence, but through schemes and subterfuge. He's mastered evasion, manipulation, and careful deceit. He sounds like the Seven of Swords embodied.
He really does. And his mission, to retrieve something called the Severed Mirror from an old abbey. Apparently this mirror holds a fragment of his lost soul and, get this, memories of his human heart. The source calls it a dangerous indulgence for a vampire.
Yeah, wanting to feel human again. Risky for his kind, you'd imagine. But the abbey is guarded. There's this group, the Order of Hollow Thorn, described as a secret cabal of vampire hunters, set up camp there.
Okay, so direct conflict seems inevitable, right? Vampire versus hunters.
You'd think so. They have ward sigils etched in salt and iron, making the grounds perilous for those vampires. A direct assault would be suicide, probably.
So how does Aven, our tactician, handle it?
With pure Seven of Swords energy. He's wrapped in a dark cloak, wearing an aged porcelain mask, moving like a shadow made flesh. Every step was measured, every breath controlled. It's all about precision, not power.
And his tools reflect that, right? He has this special dagger.
Yes, a dagger made of smoky quartz, honed to a whisper, supposedly able to slice the very veil between shadow and substance. Very mystical.
But crucially, his other hand.
Empty. Carried nothing, the story says, for he knew better than to be burdened by unnecessary tools. This night called for precision. He's not loading up for a fight.
Right, and the entry itself is key. He finds a sentry.
A lone sentry dozed by the fire. An easy kill for a vampire.
But he doesn't kill him.
No. There was no need for blood tonight. Only silence. That's a direct quote and speaks volumes. He bypasses the confrontation entirely.
Wow. So he uses the dagger and an incantation to slip past the salt wards without triggering anything.
Exactly. Pure stealth and strategy. He finds the severed mirror on an altar.
And this is a great detail scattered around it are tarot cards. The Fool reversed, the Moon, and at the center, the Seven of Swords.
He even sees them and has this grim smile thinking, a fitting omen. The universe is literally reflecting his strategy back at him.
He just pockets the mirror, no fuss, without a sound, and he immediately feels those old memories stirring.
A child's laughter, the warmth of a long-dead sun, the scent of lavender and parchment. The retrieval is successful and deeply personal.
And then he just vanishes. By dawn, he's gone, leaving only a single raven feather.
And the punchline is perfect. By the time the order awoke, the relic was gone. The wards were untouched. No blood had been spilled. Only the scattered cards remained, the Seven of Swords facing upright, a quiet warning, and a mocking promise.
It's such a perfect illustration, isn't it? On a day supposedly defined by confrontation and raw energy, Aven succeeds through complete avoidance of direct conflict.
He embodies that subtle strategy, the quiet observation, the clever, non-obvious solution. He uses the day's energy, perhaps, but channels it into focus and precision, not outward aggression.
It really makes you think about those situations in your own life, doesn't it? Where maybe the Aven Blackthorne approach, the quiet, strategic move, is actually more powerful than going head-to-head.
Absolutely. Where directness might fail, subtlety might just slip through the cracks.
So wrapping this all up, the astrology paints this picture of intense, boundaryless energy. The Seven of Swords advises subtlety, strategy, and self-awareness. And Aven's story shows us that in action. The combined message seems pretty clear. Even on days buzzing with confrontational potential, the real power might lie in quiet observation, nuanced action, and strategic thinking. Being clever, not just forceful.
Right. And building on Avon's quiet warning and the idea of hidden motives, maybe the final thought for you to ponder is this. When direct confrontation seems like a bad idea, or just impossible, what are those unconventional, subtle paths you could explore? What unspoken truths might hold the key?
And perhaps even more personally, what are the unseen relics of your own past? Maybe parts of yourself you've hidden away or forgotten that need retrieving. And could that retrieval require a similar kind of delicate, strategic, almost silent approach rather than a battle?
A lot to think about there. That subtle approach might unlock more than you expect.